The BBC, the world's biggest public service broadcaster, is in crisis. Its news operation has been hit, first for dropping its evening report on the paedophile activities of the late entertainer Jimmy Savile, then for a report that led former Tory Treasurer Lord McAlpine to be wrongly implicated in child abuse allegations. BBC head Director General George Entwistle has resigned. The BBC's tradition of trustworthiness and integrity is in the spotlight. The FT's chief political commentator Philip Stevens says the BBC needs to quickly relearn some journalistic basics.
I think in a way it was unfortunate that Mr. Entwistle had to stand down. He was very unlucky in the job for 50 odd days and walked into the great controversy about Jimmy Savile and the question about whether Jimmy Savile used the BBC as a base for terrible paedophilic activities. But essentially, the problem I think the BBC has is one of the quality of its journalism. And I think linked to that, the structure of the BBC, indeed the structure of the BBC left behind by the previous Director General.
Mr. Entwistle admitted that he didn't know about the Newsnight investigation that mistakenly linked Lord McAlpine to child abuse until after it was broadcast. The FT's senior columnist John Gapper says this raises serious questions about the role of the Director General, which combines the responsibilities of a chief executive with editor-in-chief, having to oversee thousands of hours of news output.
What the scandal has shown is that the editor-in-chief in name wasn't really in touch with the journalism that was going on beneath him, because, as he says, the organisation was too big. If that's the case, then it raises questions about the entire way in which the Director General's role is combined with that of Editor-in-Chief of the corporation.
I think there's an argument at some point those functions might be split, but I don't think this is the time. Above all else now, the BBC needs very strong leadership from a single person and from someone who is prepared to be a strong editor-in-chief.
Lord Patten, the BBC chairman who chose Entwistle and will choose his successor, has called for a thorough structural and radical overhaul of the corporation. But the current BBC charter doesn't run out until 2016, so it's unclear just how radical any restructuring can be, at least in the short term.
I think it will be difficult to rewrite the charter in the middle of the 10-year period. That opens up a whole set of issues, and I don't think that Lord Patten, the BBC Trust chairman, would want to go there. But I do think you can make significant changes in how the upper layer of management works, perhaps thin it out somewhat, have some greater direct responsibility imposed. That shouldn't require throwing the entire structure out.
Philip Stevens says in future the BBC needs to establish clear lines between reporting and comment, and for journalistic judgment to replace bureaucratic box-ticking.
First and foremost, a new Director General has to think, what's the BBC about? And I think there's been a certain amount of hubris in recent years about the BBC wants to be a big global media player. The BBC actually is a public broadcaster. It's paid for by the licence fee payers, and it's there to provide for our democracy impartial, objective news and analysis, and entertainment and enlightenment for a broad mass of people. It's not there to, if you like, to fuel and support the egos of its many celebrity employees.
The BBC's most valuable asset is public trust, particularly at a time when the culture and ethics of the British press is being scrutinised by the Leveson inquiry following the News International phone hacking scandal. The BBC needs to regain public trust, authority and stability, and it might take major structural reform as well as a management reshuffle to do so. Daniel Garrahan, Financial Times, London.